From a life filled with hopelessness to raining dollars, the story of Enzo Ferrari. It was the turn of the 20th century. The invention of the automobile had inspired road racing fever all over Europe and America. Cars hurtle along dirt and gravel roads, covering as much as 145 miles, sometimes at speeds that reach as much as 50 miles an hour. It was this world into which Enzo Ferrari was born on February 18, 1898. The founder of today's most famous luxurious automobile company, everyone's favorite, Ferrari. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Business Unmasked, where we unmask the stories behind interesting and successful companies. Hit the like button so more people can hear stories like these, and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. Now let's get to the unmasking. Enzo's family home was in the Po Valley, a land crisscrossed by 100-year-old family farms and graceful vineyards, still famous for its Lambrusco wines and balsamic vinegar. Enzo's father, Alfredo Ferrari, was a structural metal contractor with his own business. His mother, Adalgisa, was a typical Italian homemaker who adored both Enzo and Dino, who was 2 years older. He certainly did respect his father, but adored and admired his elder brother a lot. The Ferrari home and business lived on the outskirts of an ancient Roman city called Modena. They lived upstairs in a small apartment while Alfredo's workshop was downstairs, where he employed as many as 20 workers. Alfredo wanted his sons to take over his business, but young Enzo had other plans. He always thought of being a journalist or even an opera singer. It was when Enzo was 10 years old, his father Alfredo took both him and his brother to their first automobile race in Bologna. Enzo Ferrari discovered an all-new world of automobiles in speed. And so, he was bitten with the racing bug. He saw Gene Alesi the Great in 1900 and Vincenzo Lancia driving at fierce speeds, all leaving him in a trance. This was his epitome of bravura. It was a turning point in the young Enzo's life, the one that put him in the world of automobiles. Alfredo Ferrari, however, had other plans for his boys. He sent them to a mechanical engineering trade school to prepare them to take over the family business. His brother Dino accepted his fate and gave into his dad's will. But Enzo, perhaps something of a dreamer, was utterly disinterested in schoolwork of any sort and dropped out. Fast forward a few years, it was the summer of 1914, Enzo was 16 years old. Italy was drawn into the First World War, and his brother Dino was enlisted in the Italian army, sent to the front line as an ambulance driver. In 1916, Enzo's father died suddenly of pneumonia, and Alfredo's prosperous business soon collapsed. But that wasn't the end of bad news for Enzo. The word came down from the army. His brother Dino died of typhoid fever. Within months, Enzo Ferrari's once predictable life seemed to be spinning out of control, drifting from one menial job to another for more than a year and barely making enough to make ends meet. In 1917, he was drafted into the army. When he appeared for duty, he told his superiors that he was a skilled auto mechanic. Not showing any interest in what he said, they assigned him to shoot mules. Coming from ordinary circumstances, he was never taken seriously in the army. He had no privilege, no title, no family background that would permit him to be anything more than just a simple soldier.
I have seen stalks of corn with better physiques.
Enzo was affected by pleurisy, a disease that was fatal at the time. He was eventually transferred to a rundown hospital in Bologna, where he was left to die with other patients who were even closer to death than he was. Somehow, maybe by sheer willpower or dumb luck, Enzo survived and left the army in 1980. At the age of 20, Enzo was physically, mentally and emotionally a broken young man. The following year, the Great War came to an end. Italy was in an economic freefall. Enzo Ferrari seemed disinterested in politics of his country. His only concern was to regain the strength he lost during his illness and then somehow go on with his life. He managed to get a letter of recommendation from the colonel of his regiment, then headed for Turin, the center of the Italian car industry. When Enzo arrived, he immediately applied for work at one of Turin's most prominent companies, Fiat, an automobile manufacturing giant owned by the wealthy Agnelli family. Ferrari proudly presented his letter, but to the Fiat engineer who spoke with him, the letter meant nothing. Enzo was told that the city was awash in unemployed war veterans. There was no work. He sat on the park bench in Turin, unemployed, lost, his family gone, his father and brother dead, left with no hope. Enzo Ferrari was not a man who suffered rejection easily. His grief and shame over Fiat's refusal to hire him slowly turned to rage. Far-fetched as it seems, Enzo swore a vendetta against Fiat and the Agnellis and would somehow find a way to make them pay. At the end of the Great War, Enzo surfaced in Turin, ready to transform himself from a simple country boy into a race car driver. For he was a warrior lover. He loved competition, battle, and the day-to-day struggle. I admire him a lot. It takes a lot of guts to always be ready for the fight. In Turin, the automobiles for racing were simply modified passenger cars. New technology used to power airplanes, tanks, and trucks during the war was being tested on specially engineered race cars. There was a well-known restaurant in the center of Turin where he became very friendly with a slightly older test driver, an engineer in Lugosi named Savacci. He got a job at one of the small Italian automakers, Costruzioni Meccaniche Nazionali, or CMN in Milan, which rebuilt used truck bodies into small passenger cars. After seeing the books of Ferrari drive in several local races, Alfa Romeo's team manager gave them a chance to drive race cars for the Alfa Romeo team. He was appointed as the test driver and later promoted to the race car driver, making his competitive debut in the 1919 Parma Poggio di Berceto hill climb race, where he finished 4th. He then met Laura Domenica, a 21-year-old woman. Laura's life before Enzo is a mystery to us, but we do know that she and Ferrari traveled the racing circuit as a couple and may have lived together for several years. In 1923, they married in a small Catholic ceremony. He went with the team to the European Grand Prix, and it was in the practice run where Savacci was killed. Enzo was shaken by the death of his friend, the man who had helped him to gain entrance into the world of motorsports. He started to sink. It was only the birth of his son, Alfredo Dino, that made Enzo retire from competitive racing. Instead, he founded a race team named Scuderia Ferrari, which included the superstar driver Giuseppe Campari. World War II had spread its destruction. The Italian economy was floundering. Auto racing was suspended indefinitely. The Scuderia Ferrari factory sat idle. To survive financially, Enzo transformed the old Scuderia Ferrari into a factory that produced equipment with the Italian government's war effort. In order to protect his factory from Allied bombers, the government ordered Ferrari to move from Modena to safer ground. He chose Maranello, a town 10 miles away. After the war ended, Enzo developed new race cars. It was then he decided to start making cars that bore his name and founded the Ferrari SPA in 1947. On May 11, 1947, the Tivo 125, the first automobile to carry the name Ferrari, competed at the Piacenza. Enzo chose this particular race because he wanted to test the limits of his car and see exactly what it could do. Spectators lined up the streets just to get a look at Ferrari's new machine. The Italian sporting press was on hand. Even a few curious members of the Alfa Romeo design staff came to see history made. Basically, everyone was there. But Enzo failed to appear. In fact, from that day forward, he would never attend an auto race in which Ferrari competed in. It was a remarkable move it gave to the public image, adding a certain charisma, like the spider sitting in the center of the web. But soon came another day that Enzo would never forget. June 30th, 1956. Dino Ferrari, only 24 years old, died at home in Modena. Trying to control his emotions, Enzo visited Dino's grave every morning before completely immersing himself in his work, all with one singular purpose: to build even faster cars. Enzo wanted to honor the memory of his son with the Dino Ferrari, a car. He said, "Dino has so many tragic aspects to it that make it special. As you think of Dino, you think of my baby son. Dino could be a Ferrari that never got a chance to grow up, and yet had this bloodline that was unique. You'd never know head or tail when he was sad or happy." Within a year of Dino's death, the racing business that Enzo loved so passionately slowly began to unravel. There were a number of deadly accidents on the track, leading to many deaths and court charges. In one of the championships, due to some technical issues, his team's race car went out of control, crashing and killing 9 spectators, including the co-driver. Out of the 9 deceased spectators, 5 of them were children. Enzo was charged with manslaughter in a lengthy criminal prosecution that was finally dismissed in 1961. Ferraris were still winning on the track, but that was soon about to change. It was the Ford Motor Company, which after being turned down in a generous bid to buy Enzo's company, that decided to beat him on the racetrack.
Old man Enzo had no intention of selling to us.
Ferrari began to lose races, which cost him over $1 million a year to finance. Soon he was left with only one choice: to approach his old rivals, the Agnelli family, for financial assistance. Agreeing, they allowed Enzo to stay in charge of the racing arm of the company while they took over the manufacturing of road cars. Enzo Ferrari spent the rest of his illustrious life in peace. He spent time recounting the glory days of racing with his old cronies. Saturday lunches with the boys became a ritual for 80-year-old Enzo. Due to old age, he was plagued with painful kidney problems. The Pope made the trip to Maranello to pay his respects to an extraordinary entrepreneur. Enzo soon became too ill to meet him in person. By July 1988, Enzo Ferrari was slowly slipping away. He remained bedridden in his home in Modena. On August 14, 1988, Enzo Ferrari died peacefully in his bed at the age of 90 years. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. It does wonders for the YouTube algorithm, so more people can see our videos and so that you can be notified when we launch our next video. We try and put out at least one new one per week, and as you can imagine, the research and editing alone of these type of videos takes us close to 18 hours. So we would really appreciate it if you could also check out our Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can support our work. We produce over 12 videos per month, so that is literally 8 cents per video. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at our next unmasking.